Our greatest journey is not conquering the mountains, the sea, or space. It's to become fully alive, to have faced adversity and mowed it down, to have stood still in the face of our monsters and watched as they vanish, poof, into the ether. And it's this journey that calls to the hero within every single one of us. Heroes like Seth Davies. Seth has earned more than 8.6 million playing live tournaments and is a regular on the high-stakes NTT circuit. He tops the all-time money list for the state of Oregon, and his highlights include a WPT title. He has some sort of thing going on with high rollers at Bellagio, and he had a seven-figure score for finishing fifth in the inaugural Super High Roller Bowl Bahamas in the winter. Ladies and gentlemen, today's hero, Seth Golden.
Glad to be here.
How's it going, my man?
Good, man. Trying to hold down in this lockdown and keep myself busy.
Yeah, well, it's good for me to get interviews at this time of day.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, yeah, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. No one's got anything else to do, right?
8.6 million playing live tournaments. It does kind of boggle your mind a little bit when you read something like that. Yeah, I know it's not like the actual true figure, but it's pretty insane. Do you ever read stuff like that and think, you know, that's insane?
I mean, I think I'm pretty good at kind of detaching from the whole numbers of things and just not really taking it too seriously because, you know, the difference between being somebody who has, you know, 4 million in cashes versus 15 million plus or whatever, it's really kind of luck is what it comes down to. Yeah, like when you get to, you know, the best of the best and the guys who have been around for, you know, 10 years, that separates them for sure. But yeah, but kind of the newer, lower level guys like me, it's really not that different. So it's something that I don't pay too much attention to.
The newer guys. We'll get to that in a bit, but let's go back to the beginning of your time on this planet, I guess. What part of the world did you stumble into, and you know, what was that neck of the woods like?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small city in Central Oregon, not a small town. It was like 50,000 people or so. In the mountains, very kind of middle class, upper middle class, I would say. We didn't have to struggle for much. We we weren't rich or like anything like that. We lived month to month, but you know, I had a pretty easy upbringing and a pretty easy place to live as a kid. So, you know, skiing in the winter, mountain biking in the summer, sports. You know, had two older brothers, plenty of friends. Yeah, it was easy growing up. We didn't have much hardship.
When I was a kid, if anyone ever said that they went skiing, we were like, wow, that's posh. You know?
Yeah. That's there's a lot of places like that for sure. Like you go to Colorado and like some of the kind of nicer places, it's really upscale, you know what I mean? But I was kind of from my hometown's called Bend, Oregon. It's kind of like a small ski town. It's now like gotten a lot bigger, but you know, it's kind of more of the ski bums than the rich people, you know?
I mean, when you speak to someone like a Jason Kuhn who had a different, we would say like a more of a working class and a real challenge when you grew up, then, you know, the Rocky theme comes out, you know, like, yeah, I want to be determined to like kind of prove myself. But when you start off with a pretty decent life, like how does that mark you as you grow older and you turn into a man when your life, you haven't had, I'm not saying you haven't had challenges. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. But when life has been relatively smooth sailing, how did that mark you?
Well, I think for me, fortunately, we'll take this all the way back. I was a competitive swimmer when I was pretty young, from about 6 years old to 13 years old. And our swim club, we had a very good coach who was really renowned and had a lot of success, you know, had a couple kids swim in the Olympic trials or whatever, which is a pretty rare thing for a small city. And he was a big hard ass. So from that young age, like kind of learning hardship through somebody pushing on you every single day, I think that's kind of really translated into, you know, my success in poker overall, like especially to learn that as, you know, a 6, 7, 8-year-old to learn that, you know, if you don't give it a great effort, you know, you're going to get yelled at, you're going to get not abused. I wouldn't use the term abused, but, you know, he was a hard coach. And so yeah, learning that at a young age. And my oldest brother was the same way. He was somebody who, you know, pushed me in sports and in school and whatnot. And if you weren't giving a good effort, he'd get on my ass as well. So I didn't have to struggle for much in terms of, you know, we always had a roof over our head. We always had food. We could, you know, have some fun time. But, you know, I had those people in my life who pushed and said, you know, it's not good enough if you don't give a good effort. So. So yeah, I had that development go that way.
I was watching a video by Brené Brown yesterday on hope, and she was talking about a friend of hers who was a swimming coach. And she said, do you know when you do the flip turns?
Mm-hmm.
So she said every time they did a flip turn, but they didn't do it right, the coach would go like this. So they do a flip turn like this all the time. And then the parents started to complain and said, can't you do this? So the woman went to Brené Brown and said, should I do this? Brené Brown's like, no, like keep doing this. When you do this, that's when the kid, like, you know, that's super important feedback. Like, what's your opinion? Should the thumbs up, thumbs down stick, or should you be a bit like that, do you think, when it's with the kids?
No, I mean, I'm all for negative reinforcement, you know, as long as the positive comes with it too. And that's something I've thought a lot about, as far as, you know, being a parent. Like, parenthood's not that far out in the future for me. And, you know, my kids, if things keep going to plan, they're going to grow up, you know, without needing, like, they're going to have what they need. And it's going to be hard to kind of manufacture hardship in that way, because I don't want to be, you know, a hard ass dad. I want my kids to be good friends with me. You know, I want them to tell me anything, but like, for them to get, you know, negative criticism and constructive criticism, like, that's something that I think is super important for their development as people, especially from my own experience. So yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot. And yeah, I'm not at all one of the people that thinks you should just constantly be giving kids the thumbs up. Like, I think they need to learn that if they don't give it a good effort, like, they need to get reprimanded, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I just want to put a caveat straight in here, just in case you know, your parents are listening to this. We don't bash parents on this show, but, you know, all parents are just, you know, they do the best with the handbook on life that they've been given, right? But when you think about being a father yourself, and you got one on the way?
No, not on the way, but
thinking about it.
Yeah. Within the next few years, I think it'll certainly happen.
Okay, so you're starting to think about parenting. What is it about your own parents that you really want to instill and be part of you as a parent? And what are the things that your parents, in your parenting style, you don't want to go near like a bar's pole, like you don't want to take into your parenting?
Well, I would say that I would like to, what I would like to, you know, copy that my parents did was they were always like there for us, you know, and they let us know that we cared about what we were doing. And I know a lot of people haven't had that growing up, where, you know, their parents, like our parents, were at every single sports game, you know, drove us to school all the time. Like, they very much cared. They wanted to know everything about what was going on in school, what was going on in sports, and everything. And at times, you know, we were three adolescent boys who I'm sure were a big headache a lot of times. And we were just like, yeah, leave me alone. Like, I don't want to talk to you, Mom, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's something I obviously feel really bad about, but what can you really expect out of a teenage boy? But so yeah, I would say, like, always having your kids be, you know, priority number one, and making them know that would be what I would want to copy the most. And as far as what I wouldn't want to do, like, I would want to, like, there was very much a kind of a generational gap, especially between my mom and us as kids. Like, my mom was pretty devout Catholic growing up, or, well, still is. And, you know, like, she took us to church all the time or whatever. And we, you know, by the time we were, you know, teenagers, we were pretty over it and resisted that and eventually got away from it. And so she had a hard time kind of relating to what life was like for a teenage boy, and kind of putting herself in our shoes and kind of trying to be more on the journey with us. But you know, she was great. Like, she was a great mom, and that's a very, very minor criticism, I would say. But I would try to be more kind of in tune with my kids' lives than you know, than she was.
It's really difficult. Like, as a parent myself, you do kind of like, sometimes you just catch yourself living your life vicariously for your kids. You know, like, the things that you did wrong, you're like terrified that they're going to do it wrong, and you forget that they come up like my daughter's year, 35 years apart. It's like, as if I know what it's like to live in today's society, right?
Right. And I mean, we're talking about kids now that, like, have grown up their entire lives with social media and the internet. Like, their brains and their whole social life is wired so differently. And it's something that's kind of terrifying to think about. Like, how am I going to relate to this 12-year-old who's, like, you know, talking to their friends on Instagram or whatever, like, what all these, whatever young kids do, like, it's going to be hard to do.
Well, it sounds like what one of the main benefits you got from your parents parenting you three was that they were interested in your lives. So, like, if you get interested in your kids' lives, then you're going to get these things. You're going to end up playing, like with my kid, you're going to end up playing Minecraft with them. You're going to watch these stupid YouTube videos where someone's smashing a chair over his head and they're laughing at it, and you're gonna get into it and be like, you might not approve of it or understand it, but you get them, right? That's really important.
Yeah, just being part of it, and that's another kind of, a lot of the prospects of parenthood kind of terrify me, and that's one of them. Is just like, what if I'm sitting there and my 8-year-old kid wants to do this and it's just looks stupid to me and I'm just not interested? But I think we're pretty unlikely to be happening. And
I love your confidence, mate.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard I just can't imagine being, a parent and being like, all right, this is stupid. Like, I don't want to do this with your kid. I think it's just going to be easy to say, like, all right, I care about you more than anything else. I'll play your dumb game with you.
Yeah. You'll find a way around that. So you had three, but three. So there's three of you, boy. Did you have your own? Were you lucky enough to have your own rooms, or did you all have to bunk in the same room?
We had 2 bedrooms. So oldest brother had his own, and then me and the middle brother shared.
How did that work out then? Because as you're growing up as a kid, you get pretty protective of you. So what was your bedroom like as a kid?
I mean, it was pretty simple. We had, bunk beds in the corner. And then we had just covered the walls with like posters and stickers and stuff, like I imagine a lot of kids do. And, yeah, my middle brother was like pretty artistic. So he'd be drawing and, painting stuff on the walls and all that. So it was just kind of a mess. There's a bunch of posters, bunch of drawings on the wall, a bunch of clothes everywhere, I'm sure, and bunk beds in the corner. Pretty simple, basic teenage kid. Or
what were the type of posters you had? I remember when I was a kid, I went through this phase of having LP covers on my wall. What posters did you have?
I mean, we were really into skateboarding when we were real young, so I had a bunch of skateboarding stuff. We would have, some sports stuff, but skateboarding was kind of the big thing up until I was, maybe 9 years old. So, or really early on, that's what we were all about.
Have you ever played with Tony Hawk?
Oh yeah. We spent tons of time playing Tony.
Yeah. Tell us some Tony Hawk stories.
Man, I mean, we must have been. That was probably around like late 90s or a little later, maybe 2000. So I was probably like around 10 years old. And I mean, we would just stay up all night because we didn't own any video game systems, but our parents would rent them for us every once in a while. And every time we would rent them, we would wake up at like 1 a.m. and sneak out and like grab the system and bring it into our room and then just play from, 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. all night. So that was fun. And Tony Hawk was definitely one of the games we did that with.
Have you ever been fortunate enough to sit down and play poker with him?
With Tony Hawk? No, I haven't ever met him. He seems like an awesome guy though.
Yeah. And he loves the game as well. So
does he? Yeah.
Yeah. So you're young. How are you doing academically? As you're getting into your teenage years, are you someone who's doing well or not? Or?
Yeah. School was never a problem for me. I always took it really seriously, and I never really was one to have like problems with authority. So like my older brothers definitely had a lot of problem with authority. So they would get back, they would back talk their teachers and stuff all the time and have more trouble in school. But yeah, I was kind of always just the more quiet, did what I was told, didn't have a problem, being yelled at, being told what to do. So yeah, school was never a problem for me.
And how did your swimming career end then? Because, having a coach from 6 to 13 seems pretty hardcore. How did that not develop?
I mean, swimming is my oldest brother was a swimmer as well. He swam through high school and, was pretty successful. Like they won a state championship in Oregon. They were pretty good. He was like a Division I caliber, like high caliber swimmer. And he straight up told me, he's like, dude, don't do this. Like quit when you're young, like play other sports. Cause it's just an extremely taxing sport. When he was a 17-year-old, 18-year-old in high school, they would have 8 practices a week. Like they had to get up and be in the pool at 5:30 in the morning 3 times a week, plus 5 practices after school. So he was just like, this sucks. Like the reward's not worth it. I mean, it's great to be good at something, but like quit when you're young, do stuff that's more fun. And I was starting to feel that too. By 13, it would get a little more serious, and more time consuming. And I was like, all right, this is it for me.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get that perseverance if you don't have the passion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of a hard sport to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? Cause you're just like weeks on end of just killing yourself in the pool. It's just all conditioning, it's not, you're not training like with a ball. It's basically who can be in the best shape by the next meet.
And did you have any aspirations when you were younger, like career aspirations?
I mean, I always wanted to be an athlete for sure. And, but other than that, like, more getting into teenage years now, I was pretty fascinated by, orthopedic surgery. Like I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, hopefully working with athletes, but yeah, always figured I would go into medicine for sure.
And then tell us a little bit about how you found poker then.
Yeah. So I guess by about the end of high school, my oldest brother he was 4 years older than me. So he'd be, third year into college. And this was like 2007, like in the heart of the poker boom. And, he got into it. This was back when you could, work a bankroll up from nothing online and make like decent money pretty quickly if you just, the US was in the market. So it was just great. It was just great for people with no money trying to work it up. So yeah, he got into it, with his buddies and kind of got me into it. And, it took a few years before I took it seriously enough to, actually make a decent living. But, I was playing $1, $2 tournaments a bunch when I was like 18, 19 years old and kind of just sprouted up from there.
So when you're playing 1-2, are you still in school at this point or did you got a job?
Yeah, so I never had a real job. Like 2007 after high school, I went to college to play baseball for a couple of years. I had two pretty big injuries on my arm. So I had two surgeries each of those 2 years. And that's kind of where the time I spent learning poker was when I was recovering, because these were like 6-month recovery period surgeries. Wow. Like, yeah, they were pretty nasty. And so I just had a bunch of time when I had nothing to do. And this was what, 08, 09. This is the time that, I spent learning the game.
How are you dealing with that mentally if you want to play baseball and you get injured like that? Like what was going on through your mind at the time?
It was hard. I mean, I kind of always expected to, recover and have my shot to kind of, chase the dream. That's the term we'd use all the time, in baseball, was we're chasing the dream. And when it ended, it was really hard. And it kind of all came crashing down. This was like 2.5 years after high school. So this was 2010 when baseball ended and poker career began. But yeah, I mean, when I was recovering from surgeries, I kind of always just figured I'd get healthy and, have my shot, but it never really materialized that way. And that made the end that much harder, I think.
What did that do to you then, moving forward? So like right now in poker, you've obviously at some point, we'll get to it, looked at the game, thought, yeah, I want to be as good as I can be at this game. And you've got to become one of the best in the world, and then I imagine you had the same kind of thoughts and feelings around baseball, but it doesn't peter out. So how does that then affect your confidence and all that kind of thing moving on?
I think the biggest thing is that it just kind of showed me that things aren't going to work out the way you want them to. This kind of idea you have in your head of how your life's going to play out. So you need to be a lot more mentally tough and kind of willing to deal with whatever adversity comes your way. Because, I was a 21-year-old kid at the time, just thinking like, oh yeah, everything's going to work out exactly how I figured. And, especially with baseball, something I had spent so much time and effort on for, so many years. And yeah, I mean, I think it helped me kind of learn how to manage expectations and just simply know that things aren't going to work out the way you want them to that often.
Who was showing up for you at that time? Because, these things are very difficult to go through on your own. Who really showed up for you?
I mean, my brother was there a lot. He had kind of dealt with the same thing with swimming. He was a high level swimmer and kind of it ended for him and he helped a lot. My mom was always there. And fortunately for me, I had already kind of like put one foot in the poker world. So I had something to do and focus on and that I was really, really into. And like, I feel for all those guys that, were in the same situation as me, but didn't have anything to fall back on. And they were just kind of thrown into the real world with no motivation and no real skills. And fortunately for me, I was lucky enough to have poker.
I mean, your love for baseball sounds like my love for soccer when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I found poker much, much later in life, so I'm in my 30s, right? So I'm done with football, but I'm such a big armchair football fan. It's like the world has to stop when Man United are playing. And then I find poker, and for the first time in my life, something else overtakes football. Talk about that. When you first get into it, what is it about poker that just puts life on hold and it just forces people to just play for like fucking 20 hours a day? Like, what is it about it for you? What was it about it for you?
I mean, the most appealing thing, especially for me as a 21-year-old kid who had never had any money before, was just like, hey, if I just focus on this, and I think I'm a pretty smart guy, like I can figure out how to be pretty good at this game, I can make some serious money like this. Like it's, you can have, this was at a time when you could have a $200 bankroll and have, win a tournament on Full Tilt for $10,000, from a $10 buy-in or whatever. And this is stuff I was playing all the time. And to dangle that carrot in front of a 21-year-old kid, like it was all the motivation I could have ever asked for. It was just like, hey, I can win a tournament and buy a car, or I can, go to the bar with all my friends and pay for everything. It was cool to see kind of that freedom, to have the money to have some freedom at such a young age. And that was super, super motivating, as you'd expect.
What were your thoughts around money? So how was you raised to think about it? And how has that changed throughout the years as you've obviously become, immersed in more and more of it?
Yeah, I mean, we growing up, we lived month to month, and my parents would argue about money and stuff, but we did fine. But I was kind of taught from my oldest brother, again from an early age, that like you need to save, money, you need to be smart with money, you need to kind of plan and do things the right way. And by the time I was actually starting to have some success in poker, I completely forgot all that and blew anything I made, like so many kids in poker. But yeah, so growing up, I wouldn't say I really learned too much about how to kind of manage myself, but through those first few years, when you actually start to have some success and to blow money that you thought you would never blow, like I think that was kind of the ultimate lesson in kind of being mature and kind of managing yourself the right way.
Got some questions on here on money. What is it about your character, Seth, that hasn't enabled you to make more money than you could have?
I would say that I'm not an extremely competitive person, and I wish I was more competitive. Like I think one of my strengths as a poker player is just being able to grind, being able to every day do the work and, kind of push myself through the kind of dirty stuff that's not very fun. But I've never been one of those people that if I have a losing session or a losing trip or whatever, that it really just like burns inside me. It's like, I have to beat these people. Like I'm better than these people. Like this is driving me crazy. And I think a lot of the, greats, not only in poker, but at anything, really have that, like to be absolutely top tier as one of those guys. So I think that's one of the things that I wish I had more of, that kind of burning competitiveness that forces you to work harder.
Touch on that a little bit more, because I agree with you. Like to get to the top, it seems like because I've interviewed so many people in poker, like this competitive need to bash the shit out of everybody is typically there with someone, no matter what kind of personality type they are. So for you to get to where you are in poker right now, and having a deficit in this area, where are you excelling to make up for that difference then?
I think, the biggest place I'm excelling is just kind of work ethic,
Right.
which is kind of strange, because like if I don't have the burning competitiveness, where is this work ethic coming from? But like I talked about before with like the swimming and the older brothers, just ever since I was really young, I was just it was just burned in my head. Like, this is how you have to approach things. You have to work every day. You have to, you can't take time off. You can't do things lazily. So everything that I've kind of been immersed in with, there's a huge part of my life, be it sports or school or poker. I've just always approached it this way, where it's like, I'm gonna put in the work to be really good at it, and I care about being really good at it, even though I'm not necessarily the most competitive person.
It sounds like that swimming coach would have had an absolutely incredible impact on your life, because he hit you at such a young age. It almost became like a real solid character trait.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think outside of my family, and maybe even including my family, is probably the most influential person in my life as far as who I became as an adult.
So a little bit about, these years between 18 and your early 20s, where you're starting to win a little bit of money playing poker. Talk us through it. What was you thinking? What was you thinking? I want to be a pro poker player at some time. And how did you eventually kind of morph this into a narrow focus? I'm just going to play poker, and everything else, like I've got to get a job and all that kind of crap, just went out of the way.
Yeah. So, while those first couple of years, I was still pretty, set on baseball, like, chasing the dream a little bit, but it was definitely in the back of my mind. It's like, hey, this is something that I could, do full time and kind of make a living at. But that was kind of far down the road. I was going to say, let's see how this baseball thing plays out first. And, when the dream died, I just immediately said, all right, I'm going to give this a full-time effort. And fortunately for me, it went really well from the start. And not so fortunately for me, I was a 21-year-old idiot and blew a lot of money. And then this was right before Black Friday. I must have been 22, I was 22 when Black Friday hit. And that was kind of when it got a little rocky for me. Didn't have money saved, didn't really have money to earn, or at least while I was in the States. But I decided pretty quickly to go ahead and leave the country. Went up to Canada for a while, went to Panama for a while, and kind of dove back into it. But still, I was a 22, 23-year-old kid at this time. And I eventually moved to Playa del Carmen in Mexico, where I spent the next 5 years. And that was pretty rocky too, because, it was a pretty fun place to be as a 23, 24-year-old, and focus wasn't so great. Did a lot of drinking, did a lot of, things that a 23-year-old does. And it didn't go great.
It's like cold word for drugs. Things that are large. You were there thinking it. You stopped there. So who's going to listen to this?
Maybe I won't confirm or deny that, but there was a lot of recklessness going on. But it was a great time. It was a time that I will definitely not want to give back. Like, it was kind of like being in college for a second time. So, but focus wasn't great. Poker didn't go great. And, I'm pretty glad that I eventually grew out of that as I got older. And that's kind of when I would say my serious poker career started, maybe 5 years ago, and actually started, progressing and becoming like a real pro.
What was the inciting incident then? Because like every story, if we look at your, Seth life as a story, like every story has this inciting incident. So everything before the inciting incident is just set up. And then there's this moment that happens where you're watching the movie and you're like, well, this is what it's about. We're gonna see if Seth becomes a professional poker player or not. But it's a real cliffhanger that gets the story moving. What was yours?
I would say probably meeting my now wife. This was, while I was in Playa del Carmen, while I was being a young idiot. And it just kind of settled me down. You know what I mean? Like I finally met someone that I, was going to be with forever. And that was pretty apparent early on. And that the whole partying, not being focused thing just wasn't motivated to do it anymore. I wasn't a single guy anymore. I wanted to take things more serious. So I would say that meeting her really kind of, set me down the path that got me to being, a real successful poker player. And I don't think it would have happened anywhere near the same way if it wasn't for her.
So it sounds like what you're talking about here is, so obviously up to the point where you meet your wife, congratulations on that, because it hasn't, it's recently rings on fingers and stuff.
Yeah, just less than a year. So
yeah. So it sounds like you're making money. So you're in the poker life. You're not doing anything else. Like poker is the way you make money. You're either earning it or you're lending money off of someone. You're in Canada, Panama, etc. So it sounds like what you're explaining it is there's a big monumental difference between this guy who's playing poker for a living, grinding online in all these different countries and having a laugh, and the guy who ends up being a high stakes poker reg. Talk about those differences a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, main thing is just prioritizing, poker and health. Like the guy before that was prioritizing, all right, what am I doing with my buddies tomorrow? Like just walking, because especially in Playa del Carmen, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's just a very kind of beach town where everything's on this one main street. So I would say have a plan for the day that, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and then I'm going to go home and play poker. And you say go to the gym, then be walking on the street and just see 5 of your buddies at a bar, like cafe or bar or whatever, and just end up sitting with them and like drinking for the next 8 hours. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that was me before the wife, before the seriousness. So then after that, it was like, okay, I have some good people around me now. This is like when I started becoming closer with Jason Kuhn, and he was a great mentor to me. And he's like, hey man, you need to, like, if you have a lot of potential, you can progress to be, a high stakes poker player and make a really good living. And so he was a good guiding force with that for sure. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I wouldn't say it clicked, but the whole process of getting in a more serious relationship and kind of having a little bit of success too, just in the high stakes arena and kind of seeing what was out there, really made that switch for me.
How did you meet Jason? How did he come into your life?
Me and Jason go back to about 2011, right before Black Friday. Another really good friend of ours, Nick Ramponi, who was also a high stakes poker player back in as early as like 08, 09. But yeah, him and Nick and Jason were pretty good buddies who had met through poker. And Nick was also from Oregon, not from my part of the state, but we had some mutual friends, so we were hooked up through some mutual friends and got to know him pretty well. And Nick had a big house in Vegas that Jason lived in, and I moved in with him for a little while. And me and Jason moved through that, and we just kind of clicked in the way we had a lot in common. We were both really hard workers. We both had really high aspirations, and yeah, we really kind of fell into the mentor protege role pretty quickly, because a lot of people in poker, it's very easy to just be lazy and not really motivated and not kind of have the mettle that it takes to get to the top. And I think Jason saw in me that I kind of had that, and that was attractive to him.
He's a natural mentor as well, isn't he? He likes to help people out. He's got that good kind of wonderful part of him,
Yeah, absolutely. He really cares about bringing up the people around him. That's for sure.
It's that time of the podcast where we remind you, if it wasn't for the support of Run It Once Poker, you wouldn't learn how Seth Davies made it to poker's top table. So it's time to give them a little bit of a shout out. Rio Poker is an online poker room for players created by players. And if that appeals to you, then head to once.run/hero play today, and you can pick up a 100% welcome bonus up to a ceiling of €600. Now, there are two elements to this deposit bonus that make me want to become a Mexican avocado farmer. First, it never expires as long as you play one hand every 30 days. And second, all of your deposits during those first 30 days count towards the bonus. So remember that URL, once.run/hero play. Now, Seth Davies got his big break in poker from Jason Kuhn, and Jason Kuhn is a Run It Once coach, the best online poker training site this side of the Tesla that is currently orbiting the Earth. And you too can learn a few tricks from Mr. Kuhn by signing up at Rio's training site today. You will receive 2 brand spanking new training videos daily if you sign up through once.run/hero learn, including access to 3 elite videos, including one from the nice guy, washed up has-been, Mr. Phil Galfon. So remember that URL, once.run/hero learn. So, want to be a bit careful here because, obviously you've got our friends and that, but it seems like as we go through life, we have to learn at some point to differentiate between toxic friends and non-toxic friends, and toxic relationships, I guess, and toxic environments and non-toxic environments, and particularly in poker, I would guess. So talk about that a little bit, about, what were the environments. You don't have to talk about people, obviously, because I'll just say, like, most of my friends from when I was younger up to like 30, like, they were toxic to me because we were drinking all the time. So there's nothing wrong with them. I love them, but like, they were toxic to me because I would get involved in them, and I didn't want to do that kind of stuff. Like, so what were the toxic environments? And it's up to you if you want to talk about toxic relationships. I think it's an important lesson for people.
Yeah. So with me, a lot of the guys that I was friends with in college specifically were the type of guys that kind of burned out afterwards, that they didn't really like. They were really fun to hang out with when we were, in our early 20s, but they didn't really have much going for them. So I wouldn't say it was like necessarily toxic as far as my relationships goes, but just a lot of dead end stuff. Like guys that weren't necessarily, not that smart, I guess is the crude way to say it. Not smart, not motivated. And when things started to change and when poker got more serious for me, it's just kind of like, I just don't have anything in common with these people anymore. It was fun to hang out with them for a couple of years. Like, we had a bunch of good times, but, and that was something that kind of weighed on me for a while. I was like, you just got to cut some of these people loose, and it feels kind of heartless and rude, I guess. But at the end of the day, like, if you have nothing in common with a person, like, what are you doing? You're just kind of carrying baggage. And I'm sure the other people felt the same way. It's like, okay, this isn't somebody that I'm that close with anymore. And yeah, so kind of not necessarily cutting the ties, but letting some relationships just fade out, and not really be too worried about that has definitely been something that's happened a lot.
I guess it can feel even more, it can weigh you down even more when one of the reasons you change is because you're becoming successful. So you're becoming healthier, becoming wiser, you're meeting a higher standard of people in terms of what, their desires and their goals and their dreams. And then you're kind of saying, you're not saying to anyone, are you? You're just kind of like not picking up the phone as often as you would be. And I can imagine that it's like difficult.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's like not responding to some texts, and it's just, I've been fortunate enough to make some really, really great friends in the poker world, from the type of person we're talking about: motivated, smart, successful, like the type of people I want to be around. And not only just for personal game purpose. Like, there's plenty of successful, smart people in poker that I don't get along with, and I'm not like trying to kiss their ass just to be their friend for my own personal gain. Like, I've met just some awesome guys who have all those traits, and they're some of my best friends. So yeah, but there's along the way, there's a lot of not answering texts, kind of just drifting away from people.
I think it's an important skill. I mean, going back to parenting, it's like, I think it's an important skill to recognize who are the people who are going to make a difference in the world, and associating yourself with them, or trying to. And I don't think that means that we're being manipulative or anything, because you will meet really successful people that are dicks and you don't want to have anything to do with them. And then you'll meet really successful people that just become your best buddies. And it's okay to say, hey, best buddy, like, I was hoping I would meet someone like you. To me, it just seems like a smart life choice.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just human nature too. Like somebody who's successful and sharp, it's like an attractive thing about a person, be it a guy or a girl, be it romantic or just as a friend. It's something that's appealing and something you want to be around. And I don't think that's selfish or shallow by any means. You want to hear people who have interesting things to say about the world. You want to hear them talk. You don't want to hear your friend talk about his night at the bar last night.
Talk about Black Friday a little bit, because obviously it turns out okay. The story turns out all right. And this is a really important lesson, I think, because so many people think that Black Friday was like, oh, Black Friday's just killed everybody. But for you, it obviously it led to something different. But where was you when it happened? How did it affect you? And how was you feeling emotionally? And what was your world like back then?
Yeah, so I had just moved back to Oregon. I was going to go to school at the University of Oregon, do the tandem like undergrad and play poker a lot. So and it was like the first week of school, I think, or yeah, it was like some spring semester or something. So yeah, it was kind of a punch to the face, and I didn't really know what was going to happen, but pretty quickly, everyone started moving out of the country and saying, the world hasn't ended. There's still poker to be played. It's not as good as it was, but it's still a thing. It's still a thing that if you're good enough, you're going to be able to make a good living at. So it was a little smoother than I thought it was, for sure. But yeah, that definitely meant the end of school, at least for the time being, and a full on effort to be a professional poker player. So yeah, it went smoothly. Fortunately, I was able to move up to Vancouver just a few months after Black Friday and kind of get back on the horse.
When you moved out, who was you living? What was your like grinding house like? Who was in it?
When I first moved out, I wasn't with any other poker guys. My brother had two Australian friends who lived in Vancouver who had an extra room, and my brother just happened to know this. So I moved up with them. Awesome guys, became good friends with them. One of them even came and lived with me in Mexico for a while. He's like a graphic design guy, so he was able to work remotely. But yeah, spent 6 months up there, and it was just me in the corner with a computer pretty much every day. That and going to the gym, and it was very lockdown poker mode. So
what was you playing in Canada?
As far as games wise, I was playing low stakes tournaments online, just just full tilt stars, everything that was running.
So through your travels, when you get to Mexico, have you been in grinding houses with people? Like what was your best moment being, with your best setup?
My favorite setup, I think, was probably my first place in Playa del Carmen. This must have been started 2013. I lived with my buddy Marco, who was like a mixed games player, and we just had a great apartment, the two of us, like right next to the beach, like balcony overlooking the ocean. And he was just a great guy to live with. He was super chill and just fun to hang out with every day. So I never really did much of the grind house with a bunch of people, big house, anything like that. I kind of just did a lot of the 2-bedroom apartments along the way. And I think that was probably my favorite one, because that was when I was new to Playa too, which was, just such a fun time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What is it like moving from place to place, especially if you're not doing it with big groups of people? Is that challenging?
As a 22, 23, 24-year-old, it wasn't, because, I was just down for anything. Like, I lived out of a suitcase for a while when I was playing some live tournaments, and yeah, it wasn't challenging, and I just loved it. Loved all the new places, especially when I landed in Playa, and it was just a really fun place to be. But yeah, I never thought it was challenging and never really wanted anything else at the time.
I remember my wife went to work in a PokerStars event at Panama, and every time I was ringing her, she was like, this place is just full of fucking prostitutes everywhere. It's fucking risky. It's scary. Like, what was Panama like, man?
Yeah, Panama wasn't so great. And kind of all I did there, it was similar to Canada, to Vancouver. It was just only poker in the gym pretty much. I didn't really have any fun there. And I was down there with my brother and 2 other guys. And we just weren't too interested in meeting anybody. And we didn't know any like poker expats or anything. But yeah, there was hookers everywhere. But it was, we just kind of stayed in our apartment and grinded for the most part. And we were there for 3 months. I think it was kind of a shorter term stop.
What's the stickiest spot you've ever been in? So, like, for me, I remember being at Tallinn at EPT, and I can't remember the poker player. Jeff Sorwa used to play chess. Gave us this little piece of paper and said, "Oh, we're going to be in this restaurant." And the taxi driver took us, like, I don't know, it looked like we was going into the Bronx. And I was with 2 taxi players talking about how many millions have won. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, I thought he was going to kill us all. You know what I mean? And we eventually get to the restaurant and everything's all right? Yeah. It's like, I felt like, oh, this is going to be a tough spot. What's the toughest spot you've ever been in?
A couple times in Mexico, like I was fortunate to not to get in any situations that was like really sketchy, but I've been in a couple cabs with the situation you're talking about there, where, you know, had a friend who just like mouthing off, like trying to look cool, like, oh, look at all this money, I just won a tournament for this or this or this, and never got led down any back roads or anything. But yeah, I mean, you got to be. I mean, when you're in places like that, you learn pretty quickly that, you know, you're not in the U.S., you're not in, you know, the U.K. or whatever. Like, you got to watch what you say, or you can become a target real quick. But yeah, I'd never had anything really uncomfortable happen in any way. Just maybe being around, you know, some people that like trying to start some shit, and I go, oh, this is a bad guy, you know. Like, this was Mexico, this is cartel country, and those guys were around, you know. Like, they never bothered anybody. Like, they were always, you know, friendly. Like, hey, do you want to buy some coke? No. All right. Like, never gave you much of a problem. But every once in a while you'd get some like drunk idiot out at a bar who just wanted to start shit, and it was kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, after you watch Netflix and you see that they're kidnapping everybody for like avocado farmers. You fuck eating avocados, fuck being a vegan in Mexico.
Yeah, that's no joke. I mean, there was that story recently that, you know, northern Mexico is just like one of the scariest places on earth. And that's where a lot of the like Mormon polygamists, because they flee the U.S. because they can't have polygamy in the U.S. and they set up these compounds in northern Mexico. And, you know, there's a family of them that got murdered recently by the cartel just for being there, pretty much. Yeah. It's terrifying.
Yeah, no. That's what Black Friday did. See, it pushed us into the arms of the cartel. So you talked about your inciting incident and how your wife was very instrumental in that. So in every movie where there is this inciting incident, the good script writers are always also writing the refusal of the call. So a good example that I gave Jonathan Little yesterday is like, you know, Luke Skywalker takes R2-D2 to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan sees the message, he's like, come on, we've got to go to the Death Star, rescue her. And Luke's saying, fuck that. I'm not rescuing anyone. I'm a farmer. And he goes back to his farm. His family's been killed. And so he refused the call, but then he takes it up. When you met your soon-to-be wife, was there a moment there where you was thinking of refusing a call?
Yeah, I mean, along the way, I'm sure there was a number of times that it's like, hey, is this really what I want? Do I want to kind of hang it up, stop being a single guy running around doing whatever I want, and kind of put the roots in the ground? And with me and her, it was never, or not never, but very rarely was it serious, like a serious consideration to, you know, I want to break up with this person and be single again. But, you know, we had some rocky times, a few rocky times. I think as far as relationships go, ours has been as smooth as any. But, you know, with any relationship, it's gonna have its points where you might want out. And we had some of those, and I mean, I was pretty young. I was 24 when we met. I was just like, hey, is this the end of kind of my fun, do whatever I want days? And I mean, yeah, I was kind of happy to step away from that within a couple of years. But yeah, there was definitely the idea of, do I want to refuse this life?
How about her interaction with poker? Like, how does that work? Because I imagine if someone's outside of the poker industry, that they can find it quite challenging to understand it all.
Yeah, she like, poker is extremely foreign to her. Like, she's very artistic, very you know, what do they say? Right brain is the art, left brain is the. Am I getting that backwards?
It gets your way around, I think. Like, right brain's the rational logic, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, so I'd say I'm like very much a right brain guy, and she's very much a left brain girl. And but yeah, we've always kind of been the poster children for kind of opposites attract, and we've just been very good at like live and let live, letting each other have kind of their own things that. And I mean, she's not completely detached from poker. She's very interested in it, and she's always kind of interested and supportive, but she hasn't really wanted to learn about, like, okay, what tournament is this? Like, who's playing? Who are these other guys? And that's been like really healthy for our relationship, I think, because we both like our space, and we both like having something that's going on in our lives that the other one's just not in all the time. You know, you can have this thing that's mine, and I have my space. So I think that's been one of the biggest things to keep our relationship kind of fresh and healthy.
So you're not sitting down at dinner and you're all of a sudden going, this fucking bad beat I had yesterday.
Never. Yeah, we very rarely talk about poker. That's for sure. I mean, she'll just say, "Hey, how's it going? Like, how are you feeling?" Like, she's much more interested in how I'm feeling mentally, because she knows how stressful it is and what we're dealing with. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I don't tell her bad beats. I tell her when I win for sure, and I tell her if it's going bad, just so she can be supportive and be open with each other. But yeah, I want our relationship to be kind of the escape from poker. I'd like those to be, not as closely intertwined as some people might like.
Well, I'm hoping she'll listen to this. So if she is listening to this, you've got a chance to get some brownie points here. What do you most unfairly blame your partner for?
Oof. All right. What is going to make me look the best? I mean, I wouldn't say I unfairly blame it for her, but after, grinding a lot of poker, like right now is a pretty good example of this. Like, I'm playing a lot of hours online and really early in the morning. And at the end of these days, like, I'm super irritable and just kind of a jerk. And she just deals with the brunt of that. And like, I really feel bad for it, but like, I don't know, it's stress. It's tiredness, just exhaustion. And yeah, so I wouldn't say she's unfairly blamed for anything, but she's unfairly treated poorly when I'm grumpy from grinding too much.
What do you think she'd like to change about you if she could?
Well, she always calls me a robot. She says I'm an emotionless robot. So she'd probably want a little bit more emotion out of me.
That's what makes you a good poker player. Talk about that a little bit, actually, because I remember I was listening to Dan Coleman talking on Olivier Bousquet's podcast, and Dan said one of the good things about getting out of poker is that he found it really difficult when he was in poker to then divorce from it and get back into real life, because he had to train himself to be like this robot, and then to get back into real life, he just couldn't feel for like the longest time. Like, so talk about that. How does that work when you get to the highest stakes of the game?
Well, fortunately for me, I was never much of an emotional guy in the first place.
Right.
I was kind of notoriously, at least my mom would say this, kind of notoriously stoic and even keeled. So I think it'd be a little easier for me to kind of detach from poker if I was to ever, retire or just give it up. Because I'm just not an emotional guy. My highs and lows are very, very manageable. The only emotions I really show is just being irritated from playing poker. I'm not too manic when I win, and I don't get really mad or too down when I lose. Just kind of try to manage the whole temperament after the grind is my real problem.
How did you go from playing low stakes tournaments post Black Friday to cashing for $1 million? Like, what are the major milestones there?
I would say 2016 and 17 were the big kind of jump off points for me. 2016, I like started having some success on the live circuit, and like that just blows up your bankroll. Is just you're just in a whole different conversation now as far as what you can play and what your potential earning is. And this is a time when Jason Kuhn and I got to be pretty close too. One of the, like my biggest tournament score at the time, we got heads up versus each other against, which was awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah. Down a Florida 5K. I think we chopped. I think he got like 700. I got like 550. But I mean, that was a year where Jason and I got pretty close, and started making some relationships through him. And by I guess spring of 2017, he was just like, "Hey man, we've been working together. Like, I know a lot about how you play. I think you're profitable in some of these high rollers. Like, I want you to start trying to play them." And we got into I got into some of the ARIA 25Ks and started thinking like, "Hey, yeah, like I think I can win in these tournaments." And kind of slowly just integrated myself into them. And then fall of that year was Poker Masters 100K. Again, Jason was just like, "Hey, this is a good tournament. I think you should play it." and I was fortunate enough to cash it. I mean, I didn't get that much. I got like 3 buy-ins or something, but that was kind of like a foot in the door moment for me. And for Jason as well, because he, like, this was on stream. I played a bunch of hands on stream, and he was just like, "Hey man, I thought you played great. Like I really think you're there. You've kind of arrived, and this is going to be you now. Like, you're going to be a high stakes tournament player." And yeah, just hearing him say that was that was kind of the arrival moment.
Yeah. Was there any? What was a moment where? Was there any moment? I know you say that you manage your emotions very well, but has it ever affected you when you've been playing like at a different level, like a different buy-in level? I don't just mean like from a terrifying perspective, but just an exhilarating. Like, what was the moment where you was like, "Holy shit!" Like this, I'm really excited about this. Or
The super high roller bill, the 300K. This must have been 2018. The one I direct bubbled was kind of the biggest kind of rush emotionally, because it was so stressful. Like we were playing, like, it was like a 600K bubble or something. Like, min cash was just would have been the biggest cash in my career, and I ended up bubbling. And while I was actually in it, it was extremely stressful, but you're kind of just in the game at that point and just focusing on, okay, these are the stacks on my table. These are the stacks on the other table. Like, I need to execute, what I've been doing. And it's, in a weird way, kind of simplified, because you're doing something that you have so much experience with. You don't have to, feel the weight of all, like, the stakes and the pressure and the lights and all that. So that was like one of the most stressful moments. And then actually, like, when I busted and when I bubbled, it kind of all came crashing down on me. And that was one of the, like, really, really kind of just really guttural bad feelings I've had from poker after that. And that was, probably the worst one I've ever had, and hopefully won't have one like that again. I don't think I will.
How did you get through that? Who helped you? What did you do?
I mean, my wife was there, girlfriend at the time, and recovered pretty quickly for sure, but just kind of had to have a couple hours of myself, have a couple beers to relax. Not like, I've never been one to, like, medicate and just get wasted, but just relax, get a little buzz, and hang out with her and just kind of be by myself. And I mean, I recovered from it pretty quickly, and as most people do, I'm sure. But yeah, it was a tough few hours, but didn't bleed over into the next day or anything.
It seems like meeting Jason was really pivotal. So for people watching this who are aspiring to be a success in life in any field, or I imagine most people watching this want to be a success in poker, what were the things that you were doing right, do you think? Because you could have been friends with Jason. I'm friends with Jason, not the level you are, but he's not teaching me how to play poker, right? So what are the things that you were doing that really made him take notice, that people can learn from?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with a relationship like that, or any type of working relationships, is you got to show people that it really means a lot to you, and you're motivated and you work hard, and that's the thing that Jason saw in me, I'm sure, is like if there was work to do, I was going to do it. And I was like, hey, I would tell him, like, hey, like, what, you got any other suggestions for, like, stuff I should be working on? And if you just do things for genuinely the right reasons too, like, you want to get better, not just like, oh, I'm just going to make something that looks cool, that's going to impress somebody. Like, that's not, like, the goal you want out of this. Is you want to just show people that you have a good work ethic and it means a lot to you, and you're going to do, everything in your power to be good at it.
How have you been affected by backing arrangements and having somebody, like, if you're on your own, you just live and die by your own sword, right? It doesn't really matter. But if you've got somebody backing you, like, how have you managed that emotionally, particularly, and you could touch on this kind of separately, because I think it's important, playing under the spotlight these days. So, like, there's more coverage than ever, like, live. How does that all come together?
Yeah, so that was pretty hard at first, pretty nerve-wracking about, like, hey, I don't want to screw up in front of these people, like you're saying. But fortunately for me, I've always dealt with people who, were great poker players, were very realistic about the variance they're dealing with, were very realistic about, they're not buying a piece of the best poker player in the world, you know what I mean? Like, they're not like the guys who would be would be buying action with me, they wouldn't expect me to play like the best player in the world. And I've been super lucky with the people I've got to deal with on that end of things. And fortunately I've gotten a bunch of good feedback from those people. And that's, just super encouraging as a player in general, to, keep moving forward. But I just got to deal with people who have been super realistic and always really comforting. Just say, hey, don't stress like that this happened. I mean, at that Poker Masters final table, it was a perfect example. There was a hand where I 3-bet and I get cold 4-bet, but I don't notice it. So like the person, to my left, like has cold 4-bet, but I'm like kind of paying attention to the guy who I 3-bet, and then he folds and I fold. I had kings, like the hand that would always be shoving, like never ever folding. And I didn't notice. And on break, I like got a text from somebody who had a huge piece of me. This was $100K. They probably had like a $50K piece of me or something. And they're just like, hey man, you're doing great. Like, don't let that bother you. Like we're all good with it here. We know like shit happens. Just keep your head in it. Like just super understanding guys. Like, and they could just so easily be such dicks about it.
Or not even have texted you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or afterwards just be like, dude, that cost us thousands of dollars in equity. Like that was like, what the hell are you doing? And they're just not those type of guys. And yeah, I'm just grateful for, dealing with the right people.
That was a beautiful moment of empathy, actually, because they knew that you would be feeling pretty shitty about it, and they cut it off at the pass. I like that.
Yeah, I was absolutely spinning. Like I like for a couple of minutes, I was just kind of like almost had vertigo. You know what I mean? And this was my first time at like playing this big a buy-in on this type of stage, and for them to just say that and kind of keep me in line was pretty awesome.
How does poker and your move through the ranks, how has it affected your ego?
I mean, I think I've kept ego in check pretty well. I think I'm a kind of soft-spoken enough guy that I hope people don't perceive me as an ego at all. But yeah, that's something that I've always kind of struggled with, is self-confidence and kind of being intimidated. So I've more so come from the other side than the ego side. Is like I've always kind of felt more like incompetent and like not good enough than I have like, I'm better than these people. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you like will get frustrated when, somebody who you don't perceive as being good, fucks you somehow in a tournament. But yeah, I mean, I think I've always dealt with the other side of things being too intimidated.
What is there any challenging aspect of having more money these days? Is there a challenging side of it, or is it all gravy?
At the point I am now, I would say no, because I just don't have the desire to really spend money on expensive things. Like I don't want, like I'm sure I would want like a super nice car, but I'm by no means trying to buy some like incredible car or some huge house or something. Like I'm very, very satisfied in, the life I live now. So I wouldn't say I've been challenged really by having more. And I just don't like have any people trying to, leech off me, like people coming around with their hands out or anything like that. So it's been smooth sailing for me.
What's your big brother like when he sees you on telly and that kind of stuff?
He's great. Yeah. I mean, he's super proud. He's kind of hilarious because we're so opposite as far as our like temperament. Like he's a super emotional guy, like very, very like into, what's going on with everybody. And I'm just very much the opposite, but yeah, he's really proud. And I'm sure he knows how instrumental like the lessons he taught me as a kid were in this whole thing. And yeah, I mean, he's been great.
Every story hinges really on having like an amazing villain. You think of like Game of Thrones and Joffrey and those sadistic fuckers that really kind of like get you going, and a villain doesn't have to be a person. It could be an idea, it could be a belief system, it could be a theory, it could be the government. What have been some of the biggest villains in your story so far?
Well, I think what we touched on earlier, and a villain that I'm still definitely battling is that lack of a kind of competitive edge. And yeah, I'm like really happy with where I am now, and I have no complaints, but I think my ceiling could be a little higher than what how things are working out. And a lot of that stems from kind of not having that killer instinct and not having more of that relentless kind of fire to be the best. And yeah, it's something that it's really hard to manufacture in yourself. I have the work ethic, I have the motivation, but that just unending kind of Michael Jordan style, like I will not let anybody beat me. That's just something that I don't know. I just don't have. I've tried to compensate for it, but it's a big roadblock.
Does that mean that, is this related to passion? So are we saying that, because there are plenty of people who play poker at the highest stakes, they don't really like playing poker anymore, but that's what they do because they haven't kind of figured out what they're going to do next. So is this linked to passion, or is this just a character trait?
I'd say it's more of a character trait. Like I am really passionate about poker and I love playing, maybe not as much as the most passionate people. But yeah, I'd say it's just more of a character trait that I've just never really been that way. I've never wanted to stomp on people's throats just because I wanted to be better than them. I've just always been in this to, be good and try to be good and, work hard to get there.
What's the high stakes stratum? What's it like? Because when you look from outside in, you don't really know what's really going on. Like, is it a warm, cuddly, fuzzy place? Are people at each other's throats? I mean, is it really competitive? What's it like in there?
It's kind of unique in the fact that virtually everyone is very friendly. There's very little animosity between anybody, or almost none really. But at the same time, like we are competing against each other and we have opinions of each other. And, some people that I really like personally, I think are not very good poker players. And it's kind of this hilarious, like opinion of somebody you have in your head. But yeah, I mean, the people who are shitty for the most part get weeded out because no one wants to do business with them. And it's just, people who aren't pleasant to be around just don't really survive in this type of industry where, reputation is extremely important. There's a lot of action sharing, action buying, and you have to, be pleasant to deal with or people are just going to stop dealing with you. So yeah, I think the cream has risen to the top in that sense in terms of people who are easy to deal with, friendly, not assholes.
So, and at the end of every story, there's like a treasure. So, Rocky gets a title or he doesn't get a title, but he gets confirmation that he can, trade with Apollo Creed type of thing. Right now in your life, what is your treasure? What's your vision? What's your goal that you're currently going for?
Well, I'd say I'm kind of living one of the treasures right now, like just getting to this point, like getting to play poker for huge stakes and really make a really good living. Like that was kind of the end game when I wanted to get into this, you know what I mean? So I would say I'm living the dream in one sense. And then as far as long-term and just kind of general life treasure is kind of a simple but unattainable idea of just being happy and being satisfied. And yeah, I don't think, I think it's human nature to not be satisfied. I think it's a survival strategy to just never think things are great and always think the world's falling, but just try to do my best to be as happy as I can. And I think when family time comes around and I got a couple kids, I think that's really going to be the primary thing is like, how do we have this happy family and how do we, raise kids right? I think that's kind of the treasure at this point.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Because if you look at the way the high stakes circuit is at the moment, it's all right. If you're in Vegas, you can make a good stab at it, but very often to get the good games, you're traveling around the world a lot, and then you could have a wife due to have a baby, or you could have a baby or a toddler to look after. Have you started to think about that and what's going to happen in the future in that regard?
Yeah, definitely thought about that a lot. And the way our relationship has kind of worked out with my wife is she's, for the most part, sits out the poker trips. She has a lot going on with herself. She does come sometimes, but I think we'll kind of continue with that. And it's going to be, well, first off, I'm just going to have to skip some trips myself in the early years of the kid's life to be around more. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of either travel with the baby every once in a while and, have the wife kind of hold down the fort while I'm gone for 10 days is kind of what it's going to look like. Which will be tough, I'm sure. But fortunately we'll have the freedom to, say, hey, I don't want to go anywhere for 6 months or even a year. I'm going to stay at home and hang out with the kid if we want to do that. So we'll face some challenges for sure, but we're lucky enough to have the flexibility to kind of do what we want.
Well, it's been really cool to hear about your journey, particularly, that 6-year-old getting in the pool every day, and your drive to want to be, professional athlete. And I don't know, I kind of think that poker players are along that degree now, particularly at high stakes. So, thanks a lot for coming on and sharing your journey, Seth. I've really, really appreciated it.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me on.